Hi, everybody. I am so excited to have you here with me. My name is Darcy Whitlow. I am the owner and founder of Crush It on Canvas, but I am also a previous Norfolk Public Schools art teacher. I taught at Lake Taylor High School and Norview High School for a total of 5 years, and I'm super excited to be back here with this community. So thank you for joining us. I am going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do today, a little bit about the materials that we're going to use, and then we're going to dive right into our step-by-step tutorial. So first, I want to start off with saying if you are a beginner, and especially if you've never touched a paintbrush before, allow yourself to be a beginner through this process. This is supposed to be fun and exciting and maybe even a new experience for you. So don't be afraid to lean into that. When you are creating, it's never going to be perfect. That's the beauty of it, is a part of ourselves is in the artwork that we create. So if we allow ourselves to trust the process, go through the steps, and have fun with it. I always say, if you laughed and had fun and you learned one new thing, then I did my job. So the biggest goal for today is for us to have fun and learn one new thing. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So again, thank you for trusting me with your creative process and being here with me today. Let's dive into the materials that we need. So we have 6 colors used in here. If you don't have all 6 colors, you can either A, mix your own colors, or B, you can use a different color for a substitute. So let's say you don't have a blue like this, maybe you use a purple instead, or even warm colors. So you can totally mix and match colors as you go. But I am going to tell you the colors that I have. So on my palette, and this is just a plastic plate from Dollar Tree, you can see that I still have some dried paint on there, but it chips right off. So this is a great reusable palette. And I think you get a 2 or 3 pack for $1.25 at the Dollar Tree. So you can also use a paper plate, an old plate, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a surface to mix your paints, that's all that matters. So I've got this wonderful kind of medium tone blue. I've got a cerulean blue, which is a light blue. I've got white, black, red, and yellow. And the red and yellow we're actually also going to make orange with. But we do use a little bit of the red and yellow for darker areas and highlights. So those are our colors. I have a few different paint brushes. I have a big flat brush, and that is going to do the big areas of our canvas. If you only have a big round brush or a medium brush, that's fine. Just use whatever you have. You can totally make it work. I have a round brush, which kind of has a point to it. And then I have 2 other flat brushes. I have a medium flat brush and a small flat brush. So I've got one big flat brush, a medium flat brush, a small flat brush, and then one small round brush. So that's all you need. I have a cup of water to clean my brush off. I have rags. Rags are going to be your best friend. A couple of things I want to show you guys really quick before we start. The beautiful thing about acrylic paint is if you don't like something that you did, if it dries, you can take another more paint and cover it. So if I wanted to, I could literally cover this image with a completely new image. Since this is dry, I could paint on top and completely cover that if I wanted. Another little trick I want to show you guys is erasing or getting rid of wet paint. So let's say you applied wet paint to your canvas and you don't love it. I'm going to show you a little trick. Okay, so it might not get all of it off, but if your paint is still wet and you don't want it there, you can take a wet corner of your rag or a clean wet paintbrush and just completely wipe it away, and then you can use the dry part of your rag to clean it up. As far as your canvas goes, this is an 8 by 10, this is a 9 by 12. It doesn't matter what size you use. You can create this image as small or as large as you want. Even if you have a square canvas, you can still make this work and follow the steps. So we're gonna go ahead and start. One thing I want you to keep in mind is while you're working, if you're done using a paintbrush, but it still has paint on it, either clean it off and dry it on your rag and set it aside, or just leave it in your water until you're done and then clean them afterwards. If you leave a paintbrush out and it has dried paint on it, it will ruin the paintbrush forever. So you want to make sure that you keep that paint off the paintbrush unless it's going directly on the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my small round brush or my small flat brush. I'm going to get it damp. So I'm going to dip it in my water. And then I'm just going to lightly dab the excess water on my rag because we don't necessarily want this to be dripping. But we do want it to be damp. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to make my mountain line so that I can start doing the top part of my sky. So I'm going to take that damp, small, flat brush, and I'm just going to pull out a little bit of paint. See how I'm kind of flattening it out on my palette? That's because I don't want a big chunk. So I'm not scooping. I'm actually pulling. And I'm going to start making my mountain range. So it starts in that top right-hand corner. And mountains are organic. So you want to put some dips and hills and just kind of make it look like it has peaks and things like that. So that is what we are going to do. And this line doesn't have to be perfect. This is just so that we can get that that sky in. Okay. And then it goes back. Okay. All right. And then from there, you are going to we're going to start filling in this sky. So what I'm actually going to do, I just put that in my water because I'm going to use that later. I'm going to get my big brush and I am going to use my darker blue, lighter blue, and white to create kind of a northern light effect. So I'm actually going to start with white because that's going to help break those blues apart, and we're just going to layer paint on top of each other. So I'm using my biggest brush, and again, I'm going to pull kind of a thin layer of white on the end of my brush like this. And I'm just going to start flowing up. Now, notice how some of the line that I just painted of my mountain peak is already mixing in with that white. That is totally fine. Again, that line for the mountain range doesn't have to be perfect. And if you paint over a little bit, that's fine because we're going to fill it in and cover any space. But the beautiful thing is it's already kind of started giving you that northern light effect because that blue is still wet and it just kind of naturally mixed in with the white. And so while that's still wet, I'm not even going to clean my brush. I'm going to pick up the cerulean blue or the whatever light blue you have. Again, I'm doing a flat, thin layer. I still have my white umber brush. I haven't cleaned it. And I'm going to start doing the same thing and patching in that light blue, working my way up as I'm doing it. And everybody's painting is going to turn out a little bit different, and that's okay. That's actually a beautiful thing about creating is everybody has an artist within, and that artist tends to come out when you start working. So lean into that and try not to compare to others. So I'm picked up a little bit more white. I'm just going to kind of bring that in to blend some of those areas out that aren't as blended necessarily. And then I'm going to bring in my dark blue. So I'm actually going to go ahead and clean my brush off. I want to start fresh. I'm going to dab it on my rag. I have a clean, damp brush now. You can reshape it if you'd like. And I am going to go into my darker blue. I'm going to pull out another flat layer onto my brush. And I am going to start patching in the dark blue. And if you need to continue picking up paint as you work, that is completely and utterly fine. So this section is all about layering. And in a minute, I'm going to show you a little trick to get it to dry a little bit faster. But if you happen to have a hair blow dryer, you can use that to make it dry faster. But as you can see, it's already started to get that sort of effect of the Northern Lights. I am going to put that in my water with the dark blue. I thought I had a hair blow dryer, but I may not. So a trick if you don't have a hair blow dryer is you just take your canvas and try not to hit yourself in the face and try not to hit your neighbor if you're painting with somebody next to you, but you just wave it in the air like you just don't care. And it only takes a couple of minutes to dry. Acrylic also dries really fast. So that is beneficial for us when we are trying to paint, because we don't want the drying process to take forever. And a way that you can kind of check to see if paint is dry is you can kind of put your finger on top of it. If paint comes off, then you still need to wave it in the air or hair blow dry it. But if it's tacky and doesn't come off at all, then you are good to go to continue working. So I'm just going to do a little bit more of this. I hope you guys are having so much fun so far. This is one of my favorite paintings. It always I love nature and camping and the woods and the mountains. And so this always reminds me of kind of like winter trips to the mountains. So this is one of my favorite paintings. All right, let me see what we got here. Okay, so we are pretty tacky now. So I'm going to take that same brush, that same big brush that I'm using. I cleaned it off. I dried it on my rag. And I am going to pull in a little bit more of that dark blue, and then I'll probably finish with white, and then I'll be done. So same thing, we got the flat kind of layer there. Yeah, I like that. Okay. And we're gonna kind of look here a little bit. So my left side might not be as dry. That's another trick, is you can just blow it and see if it dries that way. Okay, there we go. That was just enough for me to go in here and add some of that darker blue. Okay, so I'm starting to like it. I'm gonna go ahead and clean my brush off, and I'm gonna put more white in. If I need to add a little more light blue, I will. But for now, I'm just gonna work with the white and see where we go from there. So a lot of my paint is still wet. So it's just, I'm using a really light hand. I'm trying to keep those dark sections I just applied intact, while also adding some texture and breaking. Oh no, I just dropped paint all over my floor, but that's okay. The thing about being a creative is you have to be adaptable. I still have plenty of paint on my plate, so that's a wonderful thing. Okay. So I'm thinking I'm good with that. I'm going to go in with a little tiny bit more light blue, and then we're going to move on to the mountain. So I'm going to get a little bit more of that light blue and do a little bit more sectioning with that in my northern lights. Okay. All right. So now is the easy part, which is just filling our mountain range. So I'm covering this paint on my floor, so don't mind me. Okay, just so I don't spread it everywhere. All right, so we're gonna start filling this mountain range in with our darker blue. And I'm gonna start at least with my biggest brush. And at the bottom, you can kind of see that we did the same effect as we just did in the Northern Lights. So I am going to fill it, but I'm also going to drag the bottom out so it's a little bit loose and we can continue kind of those Northern Lights at the bottom of it. So this is probably going to take a couple of layers, which is fine. What we'll do is we'll fill the first layer of the mountain range, and then we will start the Northern Lights at the bottom, and then when it's dry, we'll do our second coat. All right. So there's really no wrong answer with how big you make your mountain range. And again, we're going to do the Northern Lights effect. So even if you pull your blue paint down a little bit further than you want your mountain range, that is completely fine because we are going to be pulling those other colors into it to continue that sort of Northern Light effect at the bottom. So I am just kind of loosely and quickly filling this in and kind of pulling down to add to the Northern Lights that we're going to do at the bottom. Okay, so that's our first layer. We're going to leave it like that. And I am going to start adding the white and the light blue in at the top. I'm also going to make a little kind of quick line of where my ground is going to be. So if you look at the original, I've got about an inch or two at the bottom for the ground. So I will probably do something similar, but maybe definitely 2 inches since this canvas is a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to show myself, this is going to be black ground. So I am not worried about having that blue line there, but that kind of shows me where I can stop my the bottom of my mountain. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get that brush clean and dried off with my rag. And I'm going to pick up the thin layer of the light blue. Okay, and I'm going to start pulling that into the bottom of the mountain, just like we did at the top a bit ago. Now, if you're having a hard time seeing it and you want it to be lighter faster, then you can just pick up some white and throw that in the mix. Just so you can kind of distinguish the difference between the mountain and the Northern Lights. You know what I just realized, though, is that, I mean, that's fine, yeah. So I just realized we're going to have to do another layer on this, but we'll just pull these same colors back in. So we might lose the top of this, but the top of this, I mean, but we won't lose the bottom. So we're still making headway while our mountain dries. So no big deal. But if you wanted to wait on this and just finish your mountain range and then do this, that's totally fine too. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing. If you have a hair blow dryer, that will be faster. If not, we are going to wave our paintings so that they dry faster. If you have music playing, you can take a little dance break and just either wave it while you're dancing or let it sit. After about 5 minutes of sitting, your canvas should be dry. So if you want 1 to 2 minute dry time, you can do what I'm doing now, which is fanning. You can use a hair blow dryer, or if you need to take a break, dance break, lunch break, you can leave it for 5 minutes, and when you come back, it should be completely dry and ready for you to continue working on it. Don't be afraid to be aggressive, especially if you've had a hard week. Just don't hit anybody else or yourself. Oh, okay. So I'm still pretty wet. So this is the thing about art too, is like you problem solve, right? So I know that this bottom part is going to be black. So while I'm waiting for my mountain range to dry so I can put another layer on it, I'm going to take that big giant brush and I'm going to go ahead and fill the ground. Now, the only thing about this is black is overpowering. So you definitely 100% want to make sure that your black paint is dry before you keep doing the northern lights at the bottom. But it will have plenty of time to dry because we're not going to go straight into the northern lights. We're going to go into the mountains. And then by the time we're done repainting the blue mountains, our ground will be dry and we can continue to do the northern lights. And if we get any of the northern lights on the black ground, we can just recover it with black at the top. So there's lots of different ways to do things, and the rules are there are no rules, and everybody works a little bit differently, and that's okay. You got options. That's the biggest thing. But the only thing you want to make sure of is you do not paint while other colors are drying in certain areas, because I don't want this to mix with this. Okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and clean that off really good because, again, the colors black and red are both super overpowering. So you always want to make sure that you are going low and slow with those. All right, I'm going to wave this a little bit more to try to get this mountain range a little bit drier. I can see that it's still wet, not quite tacky yet. So I'm just going to keep waving. I totally should have got my hair blow dryer. I'm almost tempted to look around to see if I can. Oh, I see it. Okay, this is, oh no. Okay, remember what I said? If you've got a clean, damp brush or a clean rag, you can get rid of any mistakes. So I got black up there, but I can cover that with another color too if that doesn't quite get rid of it. Okay, got my hair blow dryer. Yay! Sorry about that, guys. Okay. Here we go. Okay, moving on. So then you will take your big paintbrush and you will do a second layer on that mountain range so that you don't see any of the canvas texture showing through. And you can turn your brush sideways to kind of pull some of that blue down into those northern lights that we created, if you don't want to completely cover it and have to redo that. So notice how I'm using it horizontally to fill the big spaces. But then when I get down to where I did the northern lights, I turned it vertical and I'm just sort of pulling it down into there. And it's working beautifully, so I am happy with that. Okay. Now, if you're not as comfortable using a big paintbrush, you can use a smaller paintbrush. You will kind of learn what your preferences are as you continue painting and practicing. You'll start to get favorite paintbrushes that you always use. All right. So once we have done our second layer on here, and depending on what materials you have too, you might even have to go back through and possibly do a third layer. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's okay to have to layer multiple times. I'm noticing over here, I want to get a little bit of a lighter color on top of those. So I am actually going to add a little bit of white in here, just to lighten it up a bit, make it a little more similar to the other side. Oh. Okay. Well, the black wasn't dry yet, so that's what happens when you don't completely dry your paint. And I even told you guys not to mix those two, but that's okay. It's a super easy fix. I actually love including the bloopers in here because it just goes to show you that no matter how long you've been creating, like, everybody makes mistakes and it's okay and it's all fixable. So that's the beauty of it. So I'm going to actually go ahead and dry the black more. Okay, so that should be good. Another thing is we're actually going to have black trees. So I'm going to see if my black tree covers that. And if not, I can just go back through and fix it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do the trees next. I'm going to edit this just a little bit over here, just to make it a little bit even. All right. So for the trees, you're going to go ahead and put your big brush down, whether that's in your water or completely cleaned off to the side. And I am going to pick up my medium flat brush. So this is the size brush I have. And we're just going to get, again, a thin layer of black on that by pulling out. So I've got a thin layer of black on there, and I am going to kind of show myself with lines where those trees are going to be. So this first tree on the right is pretty high up into the mountain, and I'm going to just draw a line kind of for the middle of the tree. And we want the trees a little bit spaced out. So my next tree, I'm going to kind of put about a ½ inch in between it, and that one's much shorter. And I'm just continuing to pick up black on my paintbrush and drawing these lines for the trees in. And this just gives you a sense of where things are going to be placed and how far apart. And then these lines will be completely covered by the leaves or whatever you want to call them that we do. So, let's see here. And it doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to put this tall one in just to see how much space I have between. Okay, and then I'll do one more tiny one. All right, so there are your trees. Same thing, you're just going to pick up a little bit of black, and on each tree, you're going to go through and you're just going to kind of pull down and curve out. So the motion is like this. So let me kind of show you a little bit close up. Okay. So when you're doing your trees, you're just gonna take it and you're gonna move down and curve out as you go down on each side of your tree lines. So I'm trying to make sure you guys can see. And if your trees go off the side of your canvas or your paper, that's totally fine. All right, and you're gonna do that for every single tree. You do want to try to have some space between your trees, and you may, depending on how heavy you go with your paint, you may have to do go back through and do a second layer for that. Let me see if I can get this a little bit closer. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay. I just want to make sure you can see me. All right, so going through, so some of the trees might be touching, and that's okay too. So I'm continuously having to pick up black paint, just so you guys know. And the top is always kind of like a skinny triangle. The top's always going to be thinner and smaller than the rest of the trees. And they're all going to be a little bit different. Some might be skinnier, some might be fatter, and that is totally okay. Trees are organic, so they don't have a perfect, consistent shape. And I am kind of filling all the space around the center of the tree, making sure I go kind of thick there, but then it just kind of tapers out at the end of each stroke. So the main thing with these types of trees that I think people struggle with is getting the direction of the branches. So again, just keep in mind, you're working down and out. So you're pulling down and then flicking your wrist out, but you definitely want these in a downwards position. If you do them upwards or to the going into the sides, like to the right or left, they're going to look kind of funky. We don't want that. I'm adding another layer where I saw I needed a little bit more paint. All right. All right, so we are gonna let these, well, we're gonna dry these, we're gonna add white highlights, and then we're gonna do our fire, and then we're gonna be done. Oh, and I forgot. We can, I'm gonna show you how to do the snow on top too. Oh, dropped my paintbrush. Hot mess express. I'm chaotic, but I'm always a good time, so. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and dry my trees. Okay, so my trees are dry. Now we are going to put these white highlights on some of, not all, just some of the branches. So it's the same concept. I just cleaned my brush off. I'm gonna get a little bit of white. You can use the small flat brush or you can use a small round brush. And I tend to do, you want a thin layer of white. So I just realized I had a little too much paint on my paintbrush. But I like to do like every other, I kind of go back and forth between, but it's the same motion. So you're still pulling down and out, but you're just kind of spreading them out a little bit more. And I kind of feel like I needed a little bit more in this tree, so I'm going to go back through and add a few more. And the beauty, I'm going to show you a really cool thing in a minute, just kind of how you can get rid of things. So one of my white lines I felt like was too chunky right here. It's still wet. I'm taking a clean, damp brush, and I am going to erase some of that white to get a skinnier line. So I'm just using a clean, damp brush to do that because I thought it was a little bit too thick. There we go. All right, and so then you just do that for all of your trees. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You want it you don't want it on every single branch, but you do want an even distribution. And you don't want them all to be connected. So I'm actually staggering them. So you don't necessarily want to do like triangles. You want them to be in different sections and areas and to kind of spread them out a little bit. And if some of your white highlights are brighter than others, that is totally fine. Again, trees are organic, so there's no real rules. And I'm just gonna kind of go through and do what I do. I'm just gonna kind of wing it, pun intended, because we're kind of making wings. Get it? Anyways, I'm a goofball, if you couldn't already tell. All right. Allow yourself to be free, to work loosely, embrace mistakes, all that good stuff. This is why we're here. Art can be really therapeutic if you allow it to be. I didn't want that line there, so I got rid of it by covering it in black. I told you guys could cover, so if you find lines and you don't want them there or they went in the wrong place, you can just use black to cover. All right. So we are going to make an orange next. I'm just going to kind of tell you the next steps that we're going to go through to finish this painting. Okay. So essentially, these are just supposed to be hinting that there's snow on the branches. But in a loose, fun, playful, imperfect way. Okay? Let's see. See a white chunk there. All right, so if you don't know how to make orange, all you do is you mix yellow and red. However, you want to make sure that you use more yellow than red, because like we talked about, red is overpowering, and you can get a red orange or lose your yellow really fast in the red. So I'm going to use my big brush, my big clean brush, to mix. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to take a little tiny bit of red, a little bit at a time, and I'm going to mix it in a portion of my yellow pile that I have until I have a color that I feel like is the orange that I want. Okay, I'm going to get the extra orange off on the side of the plate. If you already have orange, that's fabulous. You can just use the orange that you have. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do, I'm actually going to pick up my medium flat brush. I'm going to get it damp, dab it on my rag, and I'm going to do the kind of reflection. So around the base of the fire, I have this wonderful reflection, and we're going to be using orange and yellow and maybe even a little bit of red. So I'm going to start with orange on my medium flat brush. And I know that my fire is going to be about here, about in the center, but I'm just going to kind of take the outskirts of that reflection out further where I think the fire is going to sit, because as it gets further away from the fire, it gets less and less. So I'm just loosely painting. I'll kind of show you. I'm taking my brush, I'm working side to side, and I'm pulling those lines out so they're uneven. And as you get further down to the bottom, it gets skinnier and skinnier. Okay, and I'm going to go actually behind it a little bit too. And I'm going to get skinnier and softer as I get up there. Now, if you're struggling to have things blend, if the paint's still wet, you can actually use a clean, damp brush to help blend things out. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just using my damp brush to kind of soften things up a little bit. Okay, and I'm also going to have some lighter patches out here in the black part. I'm gonna add a little more red to my orange. Okay. All right, I'm gonna let that dry a little bit and just do some little kind of loose patches out here. There. All right, so this is where I'm at. I'm gonna go ahead and dry that, and add another layer because I definitely want my orange to be a little bit deeper than that. Okay, so I added a little bit more red into my orange. I'm going to use that to add kind of little patches in the reflection that I have underneath of the fire pit. Okay, so I just kind of brightened it up a little bit, and now I'm going to add yellow. Clean that off. I'm just going to pick up a really thin layer of yellow on my brush where it's not even really, it's almost transparent. And I'm going to start adding yellow into areas in the reflection. Okay. So that's kind of where I'm at. You can always, 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 always add more if you want. All right. Let's go ahead and create our rocks or our stones. So see in the original, notice that they are round, but they're also organic. So some of them kind of look like kidney beans. They're different shapes and sizes. So just keep that in mind when you're painting them. We're going to go ahead and pick up that small round brush. We're going to get it damp. And I'm going to show you how to paint a couple of them. I'm going to dip the very tip of my brush in black. So I got it damp, and now I've just got a little bit of black on the tip. And it's going to sit about, I'm sorry, lighting's a little bit weird. Okay, that's better. All right, so you're going to start painting your rocks in the center of your reflection, and you want them to be organic. So they're all going to be kind of different shapes and sizes. You also want it to kind of curve a little bit into a U, the entire thing, if you will. Kind of like a normal fire pit that you might use or camp at. All right, and okay. All right, I'm going to add one more stone on the right side to kind of curve inwards a bit. All right, there we go. Wonderful. So now we're going to go back to that orange color, and we are going to create our flame. I'm just doing a touch up. Some of the black kind of blended into the reflection, so I'm just touching that up. Don't mind me. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and dry that. And actually, before we do the flame, I just want you to see kind of what mine looks like. Before we do the flame, and don't mind that, I got some white paint on here, so I'm just gonna leave that because yeah. Actually, never mind. I'm gonna cover it. It's bothering me. All right, there we go. Easy enough. Okay, so now we're gonna use that same little brush to fill those stones with our orange. So we're going to take that small round brush, clean it off if you haven't already done so. And you're just simply going to work inside of those black lines that you created. And I kind of dab my color in because I don't want to go too much into the outlines. And if you need to get another chunk at the end of your brush, that's totally fine. We're just filling those stones in with our orange. Okay, all right. So now we're going to use that same brush and we're going to start doing our flame. And if you look at the flame, it kind of has like the shape of a raindrop initially, and then we have some of the embers going up. So we're going to use that same round brush. We're going to dip in our orange, and we're going to start shaping our flame. And just know that it's going to touch the outskirts of the pit that we just made. And the outside flames are going to be shorter than the center flame. So it's tallest in the center, and then on the outside, the flames are a little bit shorter. So that's how I'm going to start mine. And I'm going to kind of just curve in as I go upwards. Now you could technically probably do the first step of this with a flat brush, but I'm just going to use the same brush for the whole process. So I've started my shape. Okay. I'm just going to continue doing so. And the thing is you want to have loose lines. So you don't want to have a perfect shape. You want the lines to be separate and different at different heights, because flames are also organic. Okay. All right, and then we're going to kind of bring it to a point, although again, our flames are going to be separate. Okay, so we're going to leave it like that. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of a bigger brush to mix a more red orange. So red orange just means you use more red than you did to make your regular orange. All right, I think do a little bit more. Okay, beautiful. All right, so now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get the excess of that off on the side. And I'm gonna put that away. I'm gonna pick my clean round brush back up. I'm gonna pick up some of that red orange. And I'm going to break up that bright orange a little bit. So I'm not covering all of those lines, but I'm working kind of in between and leaving some of those lines, but also adding some new red orange lines on top. All right, so then we are going to do the same exact thing. So you can kind of see how it has an orange and a red orange now. Now we're going to do the same exact thing with yellow. So I'm going to get my clean, damp round brush. I'm going to dip it in my yellow, and I am going to add some highlights. am kind of constantly having to pick up more yellow, which is fine. Okay. All right. So for the embers that are kind of trickling above, you just want to make sure that they are spaced out. We're going to use our red orange and then a touch of yellow for some of them to highlight. So as you get closer to the top of the flames, they start to kind of go straight up and get further and further apart. So same brush, I'm going to use my small round brush. I'm going to pick up some of my red orange, and I'm going to start having the embers go up. Okay, and so they're kind of just dancing up towards the top and go up above the mountain, and I'm going to add some yellow, and then I'm going to be done. If you need to do a second layer on your embers, that is totally fine. Okay, clean my brush off, pick up some yellow, and add some highlights. Probably not in all of them, but in some of them I will. Okay, so that is it. All we have left is the snow, which is really fun. There's a couple different things you can use for the snow. You can use a wet paintbrush, wet clean paintbrush, or you can use a wet dripping toothbrush. And it's kind of do it the same exact way. So I've got a lot of water on this big paintbrush, and we're making like a wash. A wash is essentially water mixed with paint to make it more transparent. And one of the main reasons we do this for snow is because we want it to come off of the brush loosely. So this is kind of what my paintbrush looks like with that water and paint mixture. You can't really see it, but I have like a little pool of water and white paint right here. And what you're gonna do, you might want to practice on another surface first to make sure. I'm gonna pull this away so it doesn't get paint all over it, to make sure that you like the effect that you're getting and practice. But essentially what you'll do is you're gonna pull that paintbrush that has that wash, that white wash on it, and you're going to kind of flick it with your fingers. So mine is really, really light. So I'm going to get a little bit more white into my water so it shows up a bit more. If you have a toothbrush, it's the same concept. You just pull the bristles back and there we go. If you get a big chunk and you don't necessarily want a big chunk, if it's still wet, you can just use a clean paintbrush or rag to get rid of it. You can go as heavy or as light with the snow as you want. And you just keep going around and around until you're satisfied. So I'll kind of show you what it looks like. It's hard to see. There we go. Okay. So there's more, but the computer screen isn't showing all of it for some reason. Let me see if it shows it on the other one. My finger. So it just gives like an overall sense of speckled white, like it's snowing. Okay, and that is it. I hope you guys had an amazing time. I know that I did. I would love to see your results. If you want to share your final painting with us, you can email it at crushitoncanvas llc@gmail.com. And I would love to see what you all came up with, if you used different colors, how you did your snow and your flames and your trees. And don't forget that no matter what life throws at you, you can always go and create something to help with get your emotions out. But it also just kind of helps you get your mind off of things. If painting is a new skill you're trying to learn, there's lots of different resources out there that you can use. And just keep practicing and keep creating, because it is really, really good for your mind and your soul. And it's just a wonderful outlet. So again, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you have an amazing day, and we will see you soon. Okay, bye.